Come join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Glad you made it. What's going on? Nothing? Why are you here? Anybody know why we're here?
To improve my practice by being with a Sangha.
That's putting a lot of faith on these folks here.
Well placed.
I know many of them. They can handle it. Yeah, glad you're here. What else? Why are you here?
Lessening of greed, hate, and delusion.
Lessening of greed, hate, and delusion. Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
It's a good goal to try to attain.
Yeah. For sure. What else? Why are you here?
Looking for some pearls to help me get through hard times.
Yeah. For sure.
I'm here to radiate in the Dharma.
Radiate in the Dharma. Yes. What else? You know, who's here for the first time? Usually the ones hiding out in the back, not sure if it's safe or not. It's always good to sit by the door the first time, because then you can just sneak out. Nobody knows. What brings you here, you first timers?
To learn. I'm sorry. I've seen it on YouTube. So.
Yeah. You seen this on YouTube?
Yeah.
Nice.
I used to live in Irvine, then we moved to San Diego. So.
Oh, right on. What's your name?
Gabriel.
Gabriel. Would that be your name on YouTube?
Can't remember what my name is.
That's all right. I don't want to disclose your, So how does it feel being here versus YouTube?
Yeah.
Nice. What else? First time, why?
Yeah, I'm just here to learn and to practice meditation.
Yeah. Thanks.
Same for me. Just want to learn more about meditation and the practice.
Yeah. It's thank you all for sharing. It's always wonderful for new people or those of you who've been at this for years and years and years, because what are you ultimately learning about? Yourself. How much fun is that? Right? And that's the reality of this practice, is very often we think we want to learn meditation or we want to learn about Buddhism. But what we're really learning is what's going on in here, And that can be difficult sometimes. And that doesn't change. If you're 40 years old, for example, then you got a lot of years of building up stuff that maybe isn't so, not greed, not anger, not ignorance. If we got 40 years of greed, anger, and ignorance, then we got a lot to look at. So you can figure out where you are in that scale of age choice. But that's the practice. And so when we sit in meditation, it gives us an opportunity to practice just sitting. And when we're just sitting, what arises is important to become aware of, because that's the nature of your own mind. And as we will practice in meditation, as it arises, you practice letting go of those thoughts by coming back to sensation of breath. More thoughts arise, back to sensation of breath. And then, later on in your day, and you look back and you reflect on what your meditation was like, you begin to recognize, like, wow, what was I sitting with? Were my thoughts filled with greed, anger, ignorance? Were they filled with, hatred and anger and rage? Or were they filled with loving kindness and compassion and joy? Or were they filled with just, I forgot to do laundry. I need to go to the grocery store, You'll have some of those thoughts as well. So, to those joining virtually, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. Feel free, as you are, there's a chat box somewhere on your screen, so feel free to say hello and introduce yourself. Glad you're joining us. So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. You don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We spend so much of our lives judging things. Even this moment, we're constantly in this judgment state. And so the practice of meditation is learning to go beyond judgment and just abide in sensation of breath. Don't expect anything. If you're waiting for some grand aha moments or deep realizations, you'll be waiting a long time, and the temple will eventually close. So, posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Same thing if you're on a bench or chair. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands are on the knees or in the lap. Trying to break yourself out of typical posture and routines that you're in that lead to unhealthy states of mind. So I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the mind. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in your eyes. Breathing out. They fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. with the body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sound. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. The day is young. It's not even noon. You have all day to be disturbed by people. Lucky us. Meditation is not the escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, and somebody told you try meditation, it'll help. It'll help, but it doesn't fix things. Meditation helps you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. But then you have to change things. And the most difficult part about this practice is it requires to do two things that so many of us resist. Getting to know yourself and changing. I mean, that's all you have to do. The Buddha taught for 45 years. And my understanding of it is really boiled down to those two things. Get to know yourself and make changes. Doesn't sound so difficult, does it? Two things. It's only one more than they said in the movie. It's all about one thing. City Slickers. Who's seen City Slickers? It's all about one thing, right? Don't tell anybody what it is. Don't want to ruin it for anyone, right? So if you don't want to watch the movie to give you the one thing, which is the secret of life, there's two things. Get to know your thoughts and change. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, say, and do. And that's the practice. We spend so much time trying to fix, change, control, manipulate everything and everybody around us. It's all their fault. They would only do this, they'd only do that. Blaming them for this, blaming them for that. If everybody would just do everything you always want them to, I get it. Life will be grand. But if you haven't figured it out by now yet, life doesn't work that way. So, lots of people want you to change also. That's the funny thing. So, get to know yourself and create change where necessary. Less greed, less anger, less ignorance. More generosity, more compassion, more wisdom. That's the Buddhist teachings on overcoming what's called the three poisons, the second noble truth. Buddha said very simply, the first noble truth is life is dukkha, suffering. We suffer quite a bit throughout our lives. If you showed up here on a Saturday morning in the rain, you probably know that by now. Right? But the second thing he says is, what's the cause? That's the second noble truth, the cause of our suffering. Well, yeah, The greed, anger, ignorance is specifically looking at the three poisons, but underneath all of that, tied in with all of that, is the craving. The craving, desire, attachment, ego, sense of self, just a few things. And that's what leads to the greed and the anger and the ignorance. So the practice is generosity, compassion, and wisdom. See who and how you can help. Give people time, give them attention, give them a smile, give them a hug, whatever you can. Just go help. Right? That's where it starts. And compassion usually starts with yourself. It's often in these crowds the place that people lack it the most. Very often people come to these things, not everybody, but many people show up at places like this are really wonderful towards others. Kind, caring, giving. And then the question is, how kind of compassionate are you towards yourself? What type of thoughts and words do you tell yourself about yourself? And would you ever speak to other people the way you speak to yourself? Very often, not so much. So have that self-compassion and then bring that into the world. And then the last one, the ignorance, we overcome with wisdom. And for me, ignorance is just understanding that the entire world is different from how we perceive it to be. And yet we spend so much of our lives stuck in our own fixed views. And this is Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching on what is nirvana. Freedom from suffering is freedom from views. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your views are going to go away or stop. They're not. But how attached are you to your views? And how do you respond when other people don't have the same views as you do? That's where the real difficulty comes into play. And it's just quite possible that not all of your views are correct. I know that's really difficult to understand, but it's just quite possible that all the views we're attached to might not all be right. And I'm sure most of your views are correct, but once in a while. So with that, I'll pause. Just open up to questions. We'll use the rest of our time this morning. For me, really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. For those joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free. There's a chat box there. Type in your questions or thoughts. And just seeing Carol and Martina's names on here, I just had this immediate flashback to old Buddha for you days. And I'm not even sure if the two of you necessarily know each other by name, but I had this flashback from like 10, 12 years ago of us packed in that tiny little room. So I'm glad you're both here with us. So thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and we'll go from there.
I'm starting to
enjoy these moments of silence. And I used to really be, I mean, I admit I'm still uncomfortable when it's just silent and, you know, waiting for questions or some thoughts to begin, but I am enjoying it now because I've recognized certain cravings and tendencies that rise in me and that actually drive a lot of my behavior and thoughts and actions in life. And that craving or desire that arises, that I've recognized in myself, is the need for validation. And it plays out in many different ways. And so in this instance, it plays out where I'm like, oh, I need to, you know, formulate a really interesting question. Ask Jeff, you know, he'll be like, oh, she's listening, being a good Buddhist, and I feel like that, being a good student. And I'm like, wait, you know, like, hold on. And so I've just been able to at least get to that part where I tell myself, like, hang on, you're seeking validation. Why are you seeking validation? And how can you, like, reel that urge in? So that's kind of the conversations I've been having with myself during those silences, and I think overall very beneficial.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, those realizations, that awareness of how we do that, I mean, that stuff is life-changing. And as you've all heard me talk about forever, what goes on in this short moment of time that we're together really is just a tiny piece of what's actually going on in our lives. And it was funny because I didn't think about it until I, said, okay, we'll open up to questions. And for most of you who were here last Saturday, that gave away my secret of loving the silence. And I was like, oh, now they're just going to let it go longer, And the discomfort, I'm just filling in anybody who wasn't here, but I talked about that last Saturday, how we just sit for 20 minutes silently and everyone's comfortable. And then when I say, okay, we'll open up to questions, and there's always a few minutes of silence before the questions come in, that silence, waiting for the question, is the exact same silence that occurred during meditation. But now all of a sudden the mind is fixated on, okay, well, meditation is supposed to be quiet, so I'm good with that. But now it's question time, and that's not supposed to be silent. And then discomfort kicks in, and then everybody gets nervous and panics. And if you were here last week, you were just playing along. If you weren't here, you're like, uncomfortable, or maybe not. But to realize that, yes, what is going on in ourselves, and I shared how that silence is my favorite, because it forces everybody to be with themselves. No question being asked, nothing being answered, no response, no meditation time. All of a sudden, it's just pure silence in a room full of people. And a lot of people can't handle that. That alone creates tremendous anxiety in a lot of people. Just those 3 minutes of silence, immediately following the 20. So then to your point, which is, okay, well, why is that? And what's going on during that period of time? And how we do spend so much of our lives, and maybe not everybody, but many people, seeking and craving that validation and wanting to be viewed and perceived a certain way. And so this practice is cutting through all of that. Because if we do that here, if we're sitting here wondering, how's this guy judging us, right? How is the person next to me judging me? If you're doing that here, like, imagine how much you're doing that everywhere else, right? This is the absolute last place that stuff should be going on. Even though it does, the person next to you maybe coughs and you're like, oh, how dare they cough during my meditation? Somebody's phone buzzes, how dare their phone buzz? As if you've never coughed or had a phone buzz, so we even judge the people sitting next to us, Imagine pre-pandemic, we had the seating the way it used to be, for those who remember, we had like 3 rows of 10 and it was 30 chairs and everybody was stacked on top of each other. So you could listen and feel and hear everything. You know how much judgment was going on? So, yeah, to be aware of that is great. And now that the awareness is there, then it's like, okay, well, how now do I bring this into my life when I'm out there? Can I kind of drop that? It comes down usually, again, not often, but it comes down to really Buddhist teachings on fear, afraid of what people will think about us. And that comes from us not being okay with us. Because we don't feel good enough about ourselves very often. That's why we're seeking, craving, and desiring somebody else to fulfill that. Whether we know and love them or not, or whether it's a stranger. Constantly seeking, craving, desiring somebody to feed our self-worth. Because we often lack that compassion and love towards ourselves. So that's practice. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
I've been reading that all sentient beings have a Buddhist nature inside of them. Can you talk about what a Buddhist nature is?
Yes, so the question of Buddha nature, and you've been reading that all sentient beings. I'm glad you said I've been reading, because normally you just say like, hey, all Buddhists have said Buddha nature, and then I would have said, what did you read? So you're one step ahead of me this time. So the teaching on Buddha nature, it's called bodhicitta. What this teaching means is that we all have the ability to awaken. By we mean all humans, all sentient beings. Sentient beings is defined as any being with consciousness, right? So animals, for example, for you plant lovers, you can argue plants as well. I'm going to bring it back to humans for a moment here. But the teaching is that all humans, all sentient beings, have the ability to awaken. Therefore, we are no different than the Buddha himself. We are not him. We're not all one, right? We're very different. But we have the same conditions. Now, what that means is, Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was a human, was just a dude. Woke up every day, right? Went to the bathroom every day. Ate a little bit every day. Slept a little bit every day. Is that any different than anything we do? No. So when we take refuge, actually at the beginning in the Triple Gem, we take refuge in the Buddha. We're not taking refuge in the Buddha himself as if he's some God and we're trying to have him save us. He's dead and cannot help you, my friend. Right? We're taking refuge in Buddha nature, bodhicitta, the awakened being that's within all of us. And the metaphor that I love, that I share often is, think of, I don't know what it's like out at this moment, but think of a day like today where it's cloudy. Okay, is the sun there? Can you see it when it's cloudy? Why not?
Cloudy.
It's cloudy, blocking the sun, right? But the sun is there. And when the clouds part, what do you see?
The sun.
The sun. So that sun, that is bodhicitta, Buddha nature. It's always there. Our clouds are the three poisons: the greed, anger, ignorance, craving, desire, ego, stuff like that, sense of self. Those are the things that are blocking that sun from shining, that Buddha nature from occurring. So, does that all make sense so far?
Yes.
So well then what? Right? Okay, well we're all, as my master used to say, we are all Buddhas to be. We are all capable of awakening to our own Buddha nature. Our own beautiful bodhicitta. If you met the Buddha, for example, right? Let's just say all of a sudden, you were like 2,500 years ago in, some crazy movie or whatever, TV land, or the Buddha just rolled in here. How would you treat him? What do you think? Huh?
The same?
What do you mean the same?
Like anybody else.
Like anybody else? Oh, that's dangerous. That's my point. The question is, maybe for you, but definitely not for me, how do we treat everybody else? And how do we treat ourselves? And then how do we treat people that we think are so wonderful? And how do we treat people that we dislike? Okay. So how do you treat people you dislike? How do you treat people you love? How do you treat people that are kind of, indifferent in between, strangers, you don't really know them? And how do you treat yourself? Those are usually very different answers, right? You have anybody that you just really dislike? I don't need names. Or a list.
So, I have people I don't care for, but I don't hold that grudge anymore.
I'm not saying you don't hold that grudge, but you're not nice to them probably.
Oh, I'm nice to them. I just avoid them.
That's not nice.
It's nicer for them if I'm with them.
Okay. I'm glad I just let you talk your way out of that one. So avoidance is definitely your way of being nice to them. But if you did encounter them, what you just said to me, and we all heard it, was your avoidance isn't really for them, it's for you. Because if you didn't avoid them, you wouldn't be so nice to them. But they too have the ability to awaken. They too have Buddha nature. They too have experienced trauma and pain and suffering and loss. They may have caused you trauma and pain and suffering and loss, but that doesn't mean they weren't human and didn't experience that as well. So the way we practice understanding that we're all Buddhist to be and all have Buddha nature is to treat everybody with kindness and compassion. They're no different of a diamond than anybody else. They just maybe have a little bit of a rough edge, just like we do. And with a little polishing, every diamond will shine. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy to do?
No.
No. Because we want to put people in a box, literally or metaphorically, and never give them an opportunity again.
Yeah, once the door's closed, there's no opening it.
Once the door is closed, we think you're just in this box, and I've justified my whole life why, and you have no chance of ever shining again in my eyes. And then we justify it even stronger, and we reinforce that even more. Now, I'm not suggesting you put yourself in dangerous, unsafe, unhealthy situations. I'm not suggesting you put yourself in abusive situations. But if that's not the case, still apply the same thing I'm talking about. Yeah, Chuck?
Just a thought. Do you think bodhicitta is the same for every person?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Bodhicitta isn't, it's not a,
Aspect.
yeah, it's not like a tangible thing. It's not like, here's my phone.
You're saying it's the potential to awaken, so everybody has that potential for everybody.
To awaken, correct. Yeah. So it's not like bodhicitta is the metaphor of the sun. It's not like it's this physical thing. Yeah.
Hi, Jeff. The Dalai Lama has an interesting practice in airports. Because we've had countless reincarnations, everyone's your mother.
Yeah.
So you smile at everyone, and you can say to yourself, "Hi, mom. Hi, mom. Hi, mom. Hi, mom. Hi, mom. Hi, mom."
Yeah.
Like everyone here. Hi, mom. Hi, mom. Hi, mom.
Just don't do it out loud because they'll think you're nuts.
But yeah, they don't think you're nuts. No, but seriously, it's a way of seeing the Buddha nature in everyone, and
Yeah.
just smile while you're at the airport.
Yeah, you hear a lot of teachings around that where the idea is that, everybody's been everybody's mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter at some point in time. But in this life, at this moment, these people that have crossed us, that's the only way we see them. And we don't even see them as them. We see them as what they did to us, or how we perceive what they did to us. And we never open, this is the ignorance. We never open up to the possibility that there's really deep reasons, justified or not, why they did and do what they do. And so that's a beautiful practice of taking ourselves out of seeing them as just this person that we hate.
But getting back to your earlier point about non-self. So as I understand it, non-self doesn't mean you don't exist.
Correct.
Non-self means that you don't exist alone. you inter-are with other people. So to hurt other people is to hurt yourself.
Yes and no. So my understanding of teaching on non-self is that the first part I would agree with, that that non-self doesn't mean you don't exist. But non-self has nothing to do with being like connected to other people. Non-self means that you just exist completely differently from how you perceive yourself to be. And if you're able to do that, then what you just described can occur. Because we're not stuck on some limited view of who and how we think we are. So the same thing we do towards others, we put them in a box and label them in good, bad, right, wrong, hate you, love you. You know, we put these people in these tiny little categories and never let them free from them. And we torture them forever because of it. And if we can drop that and understand that they are completely different from how we perceive them to be, and we are completely different from how we perceive ourselves to be, then that kind of, you know, being able to have kindness and compassion towards all beings can occur. But as long as we're stuck in the sense of I am right, you are wrong, I am good, you are bad, then we're very much stuck in self. And for me, the teachings on non-self, I know as a practitioner, I don't wake up every day and think like, okay, is today the day I'm going to achieve non-self? Because that practice alone is nothing but the self thinking that there's some self to get over. There is no self to get over. The great teaching, ultimately, the expression is you have to get, the Dogen would say, the great Zen master, you must get to know the self before you can get rid of the self. But you would never say like, oh, my self is gone. No, because who's saying that?
You.
Myself. That's recognizing a self. So you wouldn't even know if you were abiding in non-self. So the practice is not to wake up and think, am I going to abide in non-self today? For me, the practice is to recognize how much am I stuck in my ego, myself. And if I can do that less, then I'm abiding closer to this practice of non-self, allowing me to then coexist with others without being fill in the blank. You know? Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
I've lately, or a couple of years I guess, been interpreting no self as an observation on impermanence. As basically like, you know, who I am sitting here in this room right now is not who I was when I walked in the door.
Right.
Who I am right now is not who I'll be when I walk out the door. That's where I like, I don't know, that's what I've seen with the no self.
Yeah.
It seemed continuous. What do you think?
Myself agrees with yourself on that expression of non-self. Yeah, I mean, the Buddhist teachings on, you know, there's so many core fundamental teachings of Buddhist practice. And that's where, you know, it's funny how people often get wrapped up in thinking like Buddhism is just, I'm just going to meditate and everything's fine. Well, no, if you're an angry person and you meditate, then you're just an angry meditator. Right? So it's not just about sitting in meditation, it's about understanding what are these core fundamental teachings that he actually shared. And impermanence is huge. Because if we understand that everything is all, as he said, all conditioned phenomena come together for a period of time and then cease to exist, it changes everything. And the biggest attachment that we have is to our sense of self. So if we can begin to see that we are impermanent, we are ever changing every breath, every moment. Like he said, you're not the person who walked in here and you're not the person who's going to be walking out of here. You're just a series of causes and conditions. And every single breath, you are exposed, body, speech, and mind, to something new, which changes you. And your entire life, that's what's occurring. And this also is really beneficial when it comes to anyone here have like a really bad view of themselves. If you're, you know, embarrassed to raise your hand, that's fine too. But imagine this view that you have of yourself. Again, most people show up to places like this, don't think they're the kindest, most wonderful people all day long, where you probably don't end up in places like this. But if you can apply impermanence to that view that you've been telling yourself your whole life, things will change. Starting with yourself. So yeah, and then with impermanence, I think that when we find ourselves, since you brought up impermanence, in addition to understanding this attachment to self, when we go outside of this kind of view of ourself, we recognize that every situation is always changing. So whatever challenge you're in right now, whatever difficulty you're in right now, it will pass. Remember the last difficulty you were in that you thought would never go away or change? It did. It led you to the current difficulty that you're in, that you think's never going to go away and never going to change. And then 3 minutes, 3 years from now, that will change. And the flip side of that is every beautiful moment that you experience also changes. And those will come and go. So experience each moment as it is without the label and judgment on the moment. Just experience it and see what it does to us. So, anything else before we close? Good. All right, so we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So just a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm the Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple. This is year 17 to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We take our unenlightened views of Buddhist teachings and do our best to share it with those who show up. Every night, every day, we have different people leading different practices within Buddhist teachings. We have a recovery sangha that's quite large, so anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, that meets a few times a week. Family sangha next weekend. One thing, we still have a special event. It was initially announced as Sunday the 12th. There's a Lama who's pre-pandemic, we used to have about monthly. We would have guest speakers, Tibetan lamas, monks, nuns, really wonderful folks. And then obviously pandemic shut everything down. And so we're traveling less, but we're now getting back to that. So we have a lama who was originally scheduled for tomorrow. The flyer's up there on the wall, it's on the website, but his travel plans changed. So he will be here the 26th. So Sunday, the 26th at 1 o'clock. And again, there's a flyer out there on the door, or on the wall, or it's on the website or Facebook or whatever. So that'd be really, really beautiful. Just to, as I always joke and say, listen to people who know what they're talking about, as opposed to us who are just making it up. So that'll be Sunday the 26th. Other than that, food redistribution, Thursday, 5 o'clock. If you ever think your life sucks, just come feed people, sleep on the street every night. And it tends to put things into perspective. As always, anyone who wants to stay, help, there's a list by the door to sweep up, clean up. We don't have a cleaning crew. I do have a couple specific requests. If it's not raining too hard and anybody wants to, right behind me in front of the temple, there's actually 3 pieces of wood fence that we just want to carry down by the dumpster. I don't think they'll fit, but if anybody wants to grab those 3 pieces of wood and move them to the dumpster. And then there's also a palm that had fallen that's on the other side of the sidewalk, but on our side of the street right behind me. If anybody would be kind enough to grab that, maybe break it up or fold it and just put it in the dumpster as well. That would be appreciated. So thank you all for being here. Wish you well. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Good to see you. Did that help on the non-self thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't immediately just make us all like mesh together.
No, I was thinking more of, the
the phrase "a cloud never dies."